What happens when a country music titan, the embodiment of American heartland values, steps into the arena of sharp-tongued New York pundits? This wasn't a planned performance. It was a high-stakes showdown waiting to ignite. When the topic of mandatory care for aging parents hit the table, Blake Shelton's laid-back charm was a lit match, and Joy Behar's blunt skepticism was a powder keg. The explosion that followed wasn't just television, it was a cultural fault line cracking open on live TV. The studio lights hummed, casting a warm glow that belied the coming storm. Blake Shelton, looking every bit the country star in his denim and boots, leaned back with an easy grin, ready to talk about family in the abstract. Joy Behar, seated just feet away, had her arms locked, her gaze already sharpened. She wasn't there to duet. She was there to dissect. Whoopi Goldberg, sensing the impending quake, set the stage. "So today we're tackling a big one," she said, her eyes sweeping from Blake to Joy. "It's personal, it's emotional, and it's complicated." The audience's polite applause was a whisper before the shout. Blake leaned in, his voice a soft, steady Oklahoma drawl. "I grew up in a world where taking care of your folks isn't an option. It's what you do. You stand by the people who raised you. Period." The crowd roared its approval, older viewers nodding with fervent agreement. His charm was a force field, or so it seemed, but Joy wasn't nodding. She let the applause die a slow, awkward death, a smirk playing on her lips. "That's sweet, Blake, really. But what about people who can't afford it? Not everyone's a millionaire with tour money. You telling someone in a one-bedroom apartment they should feel guilty?" A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room, followed by nervous laughter and a wave of boos. Blake's grin vanished. He straightened, his hands clasping tight on the table. "Joy, this ain't about guilt trips. It's about values. You don't need money to sit with your mom when she's sick. Caring doesn't mean writing checks. It means being present." The applause swelled again, louder, more defiant. Joy leaned back, utterly unfazed. "But presence doesn't pay the medical bills. What about when the parent was never there for you? Should kids be forced to play nurse for someone who neglected them?" The room buzzed, split clean down the middle. Cheers and boos warred in the air. Blake exhaled, the last of his easygoing humor gone. "I get it. Some parents weren't saints. But if we start deciding who deserves love at the end of their life, where does it end? Family ain't about perfect histories. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." Joy tapped the table, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "So no matter what, toxic, abusive, absent, kids owe their parents free end-of-life care. That's your gospel." The tension snapped. The audience erupted into a chaotic mess of boos and cheers. Blake leaned in, his voice gaining a dangerous bite. "I'm saying we don't throw our elders away like they're garbage. This isn't about politics, Joy. This is about being human." The crowd erupted. "That's right, Blake," a woman yelled. "Not everyone has that luxury." Another shouted back. Joy's eyes flashed. She had her target. Spoken like a man who's never had to choose between paying rent or paying for a parent's medication. Blake's jaw tightened. The country boy was gone. "Spoken like someone who forgot what gratitude looks like," he fired back. The crowd exploded. It was no longer a debate. It was a duel. The energy had irrevocably shifted. Blake's smile was replaced by the grit of a man defending his core, and Joy, with her arms crossed and smirk locked, looked ready for a 12-round fight. The air in the studio grew thick and heavy. Blake planted his elbows on the table, his easy grin hardened into pure resolve. Joy mirrored him, her infamous smirk promising no surrender. Whoopi tried to rein it in. "All right, let's keep this civil, y'all. This isn't a rodeo." The audience's nervous chuckle showed they all knew the bull was already loose. "Look, Joy, I'm not blind," Blake started, his drawl firm. "I know money's a problem, but parents gave us life. You don't abandon that debt when they're weak. You step up." The crowd burst into cheers, some rising to their feet. Joy waited, then pounced. "Debt. Interesting word, Blake. Are we supposed to treat love like a credit card balance? What about the father who walked out? The abusive mother? You think children owe them a thing?" Blake's fist clenched on the table. "You're twisting it. This is about the principle of standing by family, even when it's messy. You don't solve hurt with abandonment." "Sometimes," Joy snapped back. "Abandonment is survival." The room erupted again, divided. Blake's voice rose, cutting through the noise. "Broadly or not, you're telling millions it's okay to walk away, to put your folks in a home and forget them. That's not survival, Joy. That's quitting." His fans erupted, chanting his name. "Blake! Blake! Blake!" Joy rolled her eyes, letting the chants wash over her. "Oh, please." Easy words from a man with staff and money. "You talk about sitting with your daddy, but how many nurses were in the room while you were on tour? Don't play preacher. You're not living the struggle." The gasp was deafening. Blake froze, pushed back in his chair as if physically struck. His jaw flexed, his eyes locking onto Joy with an intensity that shocked the room. "Careful," he said, the single word laced with steel. The crowd hushed. Then his voice boomed, raw and emotional. "You don't know what you're talking about, Joy. I was there when my dad passed. I held his hand. I sang to him. No nurse could do that for me. That was my son's duty. Don't you dare reduce it to money." The audience erupted in a thunderous, tear-streaked ovation. Joy didn't flinch. "I'm not reducing it. I'm pointing out reality. Not everyone gets to be the hero. To demand others sacrifice what little they have is cruel." Blake shook his head, his voice raw. "You call it cruel, I call it love. That's the difference between us." The studio fell into a profound silence, the words hanging in the air like smoke. The clash had reached a boiling point, but then a shift. Blake took a long, steadying breath. The fire in his eyes softened into embers. "You know, Joy, you're right about one thing. Not everybody gets to be a hero." The audience leaned in, sensing a turn. Even Joy looked curious. He clasped his hands, his gaze turning inward. "When my dad was sick, I was on the road. It tore me up. I'd fly home when I could, just to sit with him, sing to him. It wasn't the money or the nurses that mattered. It was him knowing his boy hadn't forgotten him." The room was pin-drop quiet. There was one night. He was too weak to talk. He just grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Once. If I'd chosen my career over that moment, I'd never forgive myself. The audience erupted into a mixture of applause and emotional sniffles. Joy's smirk was gone. Her arms unfolded. Blake turned to her, his gaze steady. "You talk about cruelty? Let me tell you what cruelty is. It's leaving someone to face their last days wondering if they ever mattered. That's cruelty." The crowd gave a spontaneous, thunderous standing ovation. Joy was quiet for a moment, her quick tongue stilled. "Blake, that's a powerful story," she said, her tone quieter, pointed but not malicious. "But not every parent is your dad. Some kids got fists, not squeezes. You're asking them to carry water for people who didn't lift a finger." Blake nodded. "I hear that, but we live in a world that's cold enough. If we only love the ones who loved us perfectly, what's left? We have to be better than that." The applause was softer, more thoughtful. "Sunny Hostin, emotional," added her voice. "Blake, I sat by my mother's side every day. There's no price tag on that time. It's priceless." Joy sighed. "But again, not everyone can. That's all I'm saying. Making them feel guilty is wrong." "Guilt isn't the point," Blake said, his eyes meeting hers, firm but not angry. "Responsibility is, and when you take it, you discover you're not just doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. So you don't wake up full of regrets." A hush fell. For once, the crowd was united in the gravity of his words. Whoopi leaned forward. "This is the first time in a long while we're talking about the core of who we are. Family, duty, forgiveness. It's messy, but it matters." Blake's voice dropped to a near whisper. "At the end of the day, we all want the same thing when it's our time. To not be alone, to know someone cared enough to stay." The room was silent. The emotional flashpoint had landed, leaving everyone, including Joy, sitting in its powerful echo. The final act began. The polite boundaries were not just cracked, they were dust. "Blake," Joy said, her voice sharp, "your argument is nostalgia. Comfort doesn't pay bills. Millions of families are drowning." Blake shook his head, a humorless laugh escaping. "You think love and loyalty are luxuries? What's the cost of letting the people who raised you waste away alone? How do you measure that? You measure it by the child who has to quit her job to wipe her father's mouth while her own kids go hungry." Joy shot back. "That's not love, Blake. That's a trap. So what do you want, Joy?" Blake leaned forward, his drawl sharpening into steel. "A society where we ship old folks off to strangers and pretend we're free? You call that progress? Where I come from, we call that abandonment." The air in the studio shifted, becoming electric. "What I want is honesty," Joy fired back. "Forcing care doesn't create love. It creates resentment. You're living in a fantasy." "No, Joy. I'm living in gratitude." Blake's face hardened. "That's a debt of the heart." The audience erupted. Joy's eyes flickered with a mix of annoyance and something resembling respect. "And what about the single mom who can't afford to quit? She tried one last time. Then that's where community and government step in." Blake's reply was fast, cutting. "But don't tell me love has an expiration date. Don't tell me kids don't owe their parents a damn thing." "That's cold, Joy. Too cold." The room felt electric. The audience split but mesmerized. The clash had become something raw and personal, a fundamental war over what we owe each other in this life. Neither side would blink. When the storm finally passed, a weary calm settled. Whoopi acknowledged the magnitude of what had transpired. Blake, his voice stripped of its earlier edge, spoke of how walking away breaks something inside us too. Joy, for once, didn't interrupt, instead admitting with rare vulnerability, "It's complicated. Love doesn't always erase the burden. That's real too." In a stunning moment moment of truce, Blake turned to her and offered a faint smile. Maybe we're both fighting for the same thing, Joy, just from different roads. The silence that followed was one of powerful recognition. As the show ended, Blake leaned into the mic one last time, speaking directly to America. I don't care if you're country or city, rich or broke. Don't forget who raised you. Call your mama. Call your dad. They might be waiting. The line hit with the force of a final heartfelt plea. The applause was unified, many in tears. Joy folded her arms, all sarcasm gone, her face silently conceding. Maybe he's right. When the broadcast ended, the clash escaped the studio. Social media ignited. Families debated at dinner tables, and phones were picked up across the country. The real legacy wasn't in the ratings or the memes, but in the quiet, personal moments of reflection it sparked. A reminder that some conversations, no matter how painful, define who we are.